Hey guys, right in here, and this is actually post-recording. This is a few days after the initial time in which I recorded this. In fact, maybe it's even a week, I don't know. But I felt like perhaps my judgment and things were a bit clouded by the fact that I'd been playing for a few hours, and I was pretty hyped from seeing the ending. So I think I want to talk about it separately in the future, which is right now. So we're actually getting to this part of the video where I'm going to talk about my thoughts about Fire Emblem Three Houses. First of all, I just kind of want to talk about before Fire Emblem Three Houses even came out in general, and kind of like the stigma behind it and the ideas that were going around. So, before Three Houses was released, everyone was so curious what it was about, what's going on, and eventually people realized that it's like, oh hey, there's this school thing. And a lot of people, you know, being Fire Emblem fans, immediately went, ew, that's different, get that out of here. And there was also a lot of speculation, which was really wrong, now that I think about it. Like, people yelled at me, like, literally everyone was like, when they saw Sothis for the first time, they're like, that's Tiki. And I'm like, I don't think that's Tiki. And everyone's like, Xeno, that is obviously Tiki. And people were saying that for so long, and I was just like, I don't think so. And I was actually right on that, so I don't know why people were so insistent that it was Tiki. I don't know why it was so hard to believe that it was just a different green dragon girl, but, you know, whatever. It's not like we already have 5 billion of them. But in general, there was a lot of, like, worry about the game. Fire Emblem fans are some of the most skeptical people on the planet. And, you know, that kind of transfers over when you know very little about the game, when you're seeing the graphics. Initially, the art style looked really off, and I think almost everyone agreed on the art style looking bizarre, and it looked almost unfinished. But once you got to see the art style in play, which is what I saw here, it actually looks really good. Like, every character's face, maybe minus Raphael, who I still think looks like a monster, they all look great, and they all look like they fit in with the world, and you get so used to the art style that it doesn't really bother you anymore, and I actually came to like it after a while. There's a few odd faces, like, I do not like female Byleth's face whatsoever. It is so weird looking. Probably just the size of her eyes, once again, but whatever. Yeah, and with that skepticism, people have been telling me, and I've seen this comment a few times, and I have to avidly disagree with it, which is like, man, people were so skeptical, they had to show off the time skip, or else people wouldn't be interested, and it's like, that is terrible logic, because, well, hype generated for a game is good, hype doesn't necessarily sell a game, and showing off, like, what a game has to offer immediately isn't always the best idea, I guess. Like, for example, if I was to go pick up Symphony of the Night, and, like, they made sure to show me, hey, after you beat the game, like halfway through the game, the castle turns upside down, you can play it again. And that's the true game right there, and it's like, I don't actually need to know that to pick up the game and experience that. I don't know, maybe I'm just old-fashioned because I come from a time where, like, I love surprises in games. I don't look up trailers, I don't look up every single leak. I know some people do, and they just, they don't care, and that's fine. They can't keep themselves away from it. But I'm very old-fashioned, in which, like, the internet had just started to become a thing when I started playing video games and consuming media. So, until I got to a certain point in a game, it was impossible for me to know about something. Like, you could look up cheat codes sometimes. People had just started to write walkthroughs, but for the most part, you were kind of on your own. And I guess that experience of going through things in completely blind is so rare anymore that I just treasure it. Like, I value it so hard. And I find it bizarre for something like a time skip just to be like, yep, that happens. Anyways, now I'm done talking about, like, the pre-release stuff. Let's talk about the actual game itself. Initially, right off the bat, I was kind of worried, I have to say. Reason being is the initial intro for this game is jarring. And what I mean by that is, you get thrown into a game, and immediately it throws you into a battle. And then almost, like, maybe 20 minutes after that, it's like, hey, pick a house to teach. And it's like, I was hoping for a better political view on all the houses. At the time, you are given very little to work with, and it is almost just like, choose your favorite characters, which I don't mind. That's not quite what I was looking for. I really would have liked a prolonged intro. Something that really shows off the political state of each house, something that shows off their goals. And it's also kind of difficult to pick one because none of the actual students are telling you what they want. Like, Dimitri, I don't even know if Dimitri wants anything, but Dimitri, Edelgard, and Claude don't even tell you what they're up to half the time, especially Claude. I didn't even know until post-time skip what Claude wanted to do, like what his leadership was, and it makes picking a route feel rushed, and like I don't know what's going on, but at the end of the day, they did give me a little bit more than I thought they could have, so, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it still, but that's just a minute part of the game. When you actually get to playing the game, I'm gonna immediately talk about the gameplay first. Gameplay is amazing for this game. It has a few kinks it needs to work out, but otherwise, it is amazing. I love the actual variable classes. There are people sitting around in Shadows of Valentia going like, look how variable the classes are, you can just go into anything. It's like, no you can't. That class system is some of the most rigid shit I've ever seen in Shadows of Valentia. Like, you throw the villager into whatever class, but it doesn't really matter all that much because the Dread Fighter's the only thing that matters in that entire game. And having this freeform class management is so much fun. Like the idea of, oh, I can go into this, and then go into this, and get the skill from this, and transfer over to this, and all of this within a time gate. That is the important part, is that there is a time gate, so you cannot infinitely level. And what I mean by that is, in Fire Emblem Awakening, you can go, and you can just grind and grind and grind endlessly. So therefore, you can go from one class to another class, and you can grab skills from every single one, making your soldier just ridiculous. And that is one of the biggest things I disliked about that game. Not because I dislike grinding, but in a Fire Emblem game, it just turns it into running your units over people who die to you in like 30 seconds because your units are broken. So having this very flexible class system put into a very rigid time gate is exactly what you need. I love that. It didn't feel like I had any chances to make any units too strong by like classing them 7 different times or anything like that. But at the same time, I had plenty of time to take people where I wanted to and have them go the route that I wanted to, which was really cool. I'm glad that making Byleth making Nox, I should say, brawler didn't gimp him at all. Like, the way the game works, when I had to pull out the Sword of the Creator, it worked just fine. Maybe it doesn't work as well as if I want a sword fighter, like the game probably would have recommended, but it worked fine. Like, every function he has was perfectly applicable. I loved playing him the way I did. I wanted to play, like, a martial arts Fire Emblem character since I started playing Fire Emblem in general, and it finally gave that to me, and I'm so happy. If there is one thing I do have to talk about with the class management system, it's that it arbitrarily locks you off from seeing the last tier of classes for no reason at all. I feel like they just put it there so you feel like you unlock something, but I don't see a reason to block you off from seeing the final tier of classes. Like, how am I supposed to know I'm gonna have to build this person as a swordsman and a mage to get the... I forgot what it's called. The Savant, the Mortal Savant, if I don't know the Mortal Savant exists. Like, it's such a stupid small thing, but it's whatever. It just makes the beginning of the game a little confusing as to what you're trying to do. As far as the time management goes too, I love the time management. I love this. I loved every single Persona game, even the ones that don't have time management actually. But it's so much fun managing your day-to-day. The problem is, there's not enough to do, and people would disagree with me. I've seen people disagree, which is fine. And be like, Xeno, there's tons to do. You can always just class people over to this, or like overtrain them and do this, and it's like, I want things to do that make me feel like I'm not wasting my time. At the beginning of the game, until you hit the time skip, everything is fine. You're doing things, it's going along, you feel like everything has a function. But after you hit that time skip and you get everyone maxed out, it just feels like you're spending 3-4 months doing nothing. Like, oh yeah, I could go and eat with people and then make sure that they're ready for class, but the tournament hardly ever matters. I hardly ever did the tournament because it barely gives anything that's worthwhile. I was always stockpiled on money and items. It's just there for no reason at all. The food area is the only thing I used. Fishing, while it was initially nice for stats and such, I never did it for like the last 5 months of the game. And the church singing is essentially, like the choir is essentially just eating, but you gain some extra stats and you can only do it once. There's not enough to do. Because gardening doesn't take up any time. So basically, when you're choosing to spend your time at school, you have 3 options. You can eat, you can sing once, or you can go to the tournament. Or you can go to teachers and have them teach Byleth a little bit, but there needs to be more than that. And the reason I say that, and a lot of people don't agree, is look at Persona 5. What do you do in Persona 5? How many things can you do? You can spend a huge amount of time just going to eat burgers in that game, and that is a repetitive arc that goes on throughout the game where you're able to eat better and better. You go and train stats at different buildings, and it feels like you're actually doing something different. When you go hang out with people for social links, the social links are actually split into 10 parts instead of them being supports, so that's a different thing, and I can't really compare them. But because those are also tied to your stats, those feel like a huge deal. Or I should say they're tied to, like, the Persona stats. It's complicated if you haven't played the game, but... Anyways, all I'm saying is that with time management systems like these, you need to make sure that every single day you spend is worthwhile, and it feels like you accomplished something, and you're not just doing it to just get through the day. That's the worst feeling. That's when it starts feeling like real life, and I don't like that. Now, as for the gameplay itself, I really liked how the game played. A lot of people were worried because, you know, Fire Emblem players are addicted to the weapon triangle. It's like crack to them. But they decided to abandon it. It's kind of still in there because of all the breaker skills, but that's not really what's going on. And it abandoned it for more conventional tactics, which is just, okay, I have these 3 enemies here, I have 4 allies here, how am I gonna take these guys out? And it's still really fun, honestly. I love combat arts and gambits, although apparently I rarely ever use the combat arts because almost all of them you can't attack twice with. And 90% of the time when I had a combat art that was useful against like a flyer or something, it would just be less damage than attacking the person twice. So I hardly ever found uses for them past like the very early points of the game when you're just trying to get damage out. Apparently on the harder difficulties, they're really useful, but on hard and normal, you hardly even need them. Gambits are really cool because they make you feel like you're not alone on the battlefield and like you actually have command over some troops. It makes your units feel like individual generals who are leading a group of generic soldiers with them at all times. Soldiers who have their own health bars, they have their own morale. I mean, they don't actually have those things, but they have something really close to it, and they have a number of uses. And the idea that you can use those to fight these huge beast monsters, which I find the large monsters really cool. It was a really cool idea, because in my opinion, big dragons in Fire Emblem have always been the most boring things to fight in the world. And I have actually had more fun fighting angry turtles in this game than I have had fighting dragons in any Fire Emblem game ever. Because they have their own mechanics set. They can still hurt, but for the most part I kind of trivialized them using the gambits, but they were still really cool to see. They were something that took up a huge space on the battlefield, and they broke up the monotony of fighting soldiers quite a bit. As far as the classes go, they were all really viable. There were some that were less so than others, like mages in general, or the Gremory. They are really good, like Lysithea, if you give them range up items, but their movement speed is so slow. It's probably why the Dark Knight is considered like the superior class usually, but you know, I don't always use the superior classes, and people don't really seem to understand this about me, even after I've played like 5 Fire Emblem games and said it again and again and again. People like Xeno, you can just let there be 2 people who have the same class, and it's like, I don't like that. That is something you will have to understand about me, and I don't know how people don't. I do not like overlapping classes unless I think it's absolutely necessary. Even if something is objectively worse, I would rather have it. Because, I don't know, I like the variety. It's just me. May not make sense to you guys, but that's how I play the video games, irrationally. So just get over it, I guess. And archers felt great. I really liked how archers felt here. They felt really useful, and the golden deer has the most archers out of anyone, as I've been told. They are just kind of the archer class because Claude, you have a lord who is an archer, which I think is awesome, by the way. It's really cool. The animations for attacks were so good. Shadows of Valentia had some really good animations, and I really liked them. I know I'm comparing things a lot to Shadows of Valentia, but that was like the last Fire Emblem game to come out. Unless you're Sakurai, and I guess Fire Emblem Heroes is the last Fire Emblem game to come out. So, compared to Fire Emblem Heroes, these animations are a lot better. But no. I love the animations, the critical animations, the normal animations, they all felt great. Some of the relic weapons animations for like Claude look amazing. The crit animations look just, oh, everything looks so clean. It may not have a lot of the impact that I liked about Shadows of Valentia though. Like, when you have a shield in here, they kind of do the same thing where you kind of bounce off. But I really liked watching swords clash in SOV, and I was kind of hoping they'd bring that back. I know it's really complicated to create animations that all interact with each other like that. But, you know, I thought it was really cool looking how people, like, dodged and weave back and forth. But, we'll see. And overall, I found the level design to be hit or miss a lot of the times. Like, there were hardly any levels where I looked at that, and I'm talking about on a non-aesthetic, like a level design circumstance. I was like, damn, this level's good. I actually really liked the last level because it didn't try to go for some grandiose area where you're on the back of a dragon flying in the sky, or you're in some space-time vacuum, or something like that. It is just a field. It is just an open field that has a bunch of dead generals on it, and I think that was a super cool setting to do. It just normalizes kind of a freaky situation. But overall, I felt the levels were like meh in general. The lava maps were just awful. Like, there was no reason to have them in the game except for just be like, hey, we have lava maps. And it's like, really? There weren't any snow ones? I bet there probably is for Dimitri because he, like, lives in the north, but not that we saw, really. But yeah. Maps overall, yeah. Now, I want to talk about the presentation. First of all, the UI. I love the UI in this game. They paid a lot of attention to the UI and making sure it looked clean. But a lot of the time, I felt like browsing menus was kind of a pain. And what I mean by that is there are certain screens. Like, I can't remember the exact screen, but there are tons of screens that would be wonderful if I could see the class requirements for every class. Like, what I need to get to this class, but there is no way to look at it. Like, you cannot see the requirements to become an X unless you freaking go to like a very specific screen, and I think it would just be nice to be able to look at the requirements almost at any time to get to a certain class, and very easily too. Other than that, the UI was great. I really loved the stylistic choice they had for it. It was kind of like you were a teacher and you had a clipboard with a calendar, and you were looking through all these students' files when you went to the roster. It was really neat, and a lot of it was really well organized, so you could see everything just fine. The soundtrack itself, I really like the soundtrack here. It's one of the better ones. In general, I don't like a lot of Fire Emblem soundtracks, and like, I don't really care for 6, 7, or 8s. I don't really care for Shadow Dragons or Mystery of the Emblems. I don't really care for... I have to be kind of honest here. I don't really like Awakenings that much. Well, no, I like Awakenings a lot. Actually, I take that back. Awakening is a fantastic soundtrack. I feel like most of the later games actually have better soundtracks. I hate the bit trumpets in the GBA games. There's a few songs in there that I like, but for the most part, it's just like, ugh. I almost just turned the sound off. But, yeah. There's a few standout tracks. Like, I really like the, outro intro theme, where they're singing, I think it's called The Edge of Dawn. I really like that vocal track, and it's saying something from a person who doesn't enjoy vocal tracks too often. The final boss map had a fantastic song. My favorite moment throughout it all, though, is when you go to the, underground lair, and it's just playing straight up dubstep. Like, they weren't afraid to throw that in there. That was awesome. I know a lot of people hate dubstep because, you know, everyone wants to be a music critic even if they don't play like an instrument. Like I've played guitar for 15 years and, you know, as long as there's like a melody there, it's music. Doesn't even matter where it comes from. But yeah, I really enjoyed how experimental they were with some of the tracks. They played it safe with some of the others, but overall the soundtrack isn't like, I don't want to say it's like fantastic levels. Like I'll never forget some of these songs, but it's up there on the Fire Emblem levels of soundtracks. I particularly like the actually more relaxing things, like when you're walking around Garrett Mach and the tea time songs, and in general, the more relaxing songs I actually found to enjoy a bit more, which is rare for me because I normally like the high energy ones. Alright, now we gotta talk about the biggest part, which is the story and characters. So, the story, I don't even know how to talk about this, because I'm talking about like a disjointed one-path story. And a lot of people disagree with me when I say this because they've played the other paths. But this is coming from someone who has not played any other path yet. This is coming from someone who has a raw experience of just this. And let's say I'm the average player, because let's be honest, the average player who plays this game isn't even going to finish it, it's so damn long. The average player, if they do finish it, is not going to go back and play it again. It's kind of like Nier in that way. But as a person who's only played one route so far, the story was solid, but it didn't hit in the places it needed to, in my opinion. First thing being, every time it revealed something, it had no impact whatsoever. Like, every time they revealed something, it was in the most normalized, lackluster way possible. And that's fine, but you need to limit that. For example, this is a weird example. I keep bringing up Attack on Titan for storytelling, but Attack on Titan has a moment where, I'm not going to spoil it for people, obviously, but where Aaron's sitting on they're just sitting around, recovering from battle, whatever, and some guy just walks up to Aaron, and he says, hey, spoiler, 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 extreme plot point, spoiler, and then just, like, in a normal conversation, and he reveals, like, 5 different plot points, or I should say, like, mysteries that they had been looking into, and then, they just walk away. And that's it. That was the entire impact for the whole thing, and it was such a good moment. But the thing is, you have to put those moments in between the explosive moments of, oh my god, this person was this person all along, this person, and I feel like we never had that. Every single time something happened, it was just like, Edelgard took off her helmet. Oh, okay, Edelgard, nice to see that you're the Flame Emperor. And then it'll be like, oh, hey, look. And then, like, when you get to the big battle, there's Rhea, and she, like, stares at you, and then she's like, don't worry, I'll protect you. And she just turns into a dragon. It's like, I guess she's a dragon, and we're not gonna get any more exposition on that at all for a while. And then with Dimitri, although I don't necessarily dislike his death since he died kind of crazily, but Dimitri, you see him, and he literally shows up on the battlefield, and you're like, I haven't seen you in forever. He's like, I'll kill you if you get in my way, and then he runs off and gets stabbed and dies off screen. It's just like, there's no moment where I look back at this game and I was like, whoa, that moment blew my mind, because, like, none of it had any impact, and a lot of it wasn't deserved. I'm sure if you play every single route, everything lines up and makes perfect sense. But the difference between asking for someone to play every single route in here or play every single route in Nier is a very different thing. Each route in Nier does not take from 60 to 100 hours to get through. It is a very condensed game, but here it's a lot to ask of a person. And overall, I also found that a lot of the surprises when they came up were not hinted at all, because you don't have the specifics necessary to see that, especially the Edelgard thing. Because while I see Edelgard plotting as she always is, literally everyone is, Claude, Edelgard, Dimitri's just living life, actually. Having a bad time. I could never have guessed who the Flame Emperor was, except for, like, a few small comments she made here and there, but those comments could have meant literally anything. And the thing is, I don't know what Edelgard is doing when I'm not around. The game does not tell you, hey, Dimitri's doing this month, and Edelgard's doing this So there's no way to know what they're doing? Like, I don't even know how I'm supposed to guess that. It's a little frustrating to me, honestly, just because they're using a lack of information that the game gives you that you can acquire. Like, your character should have that information. He is a teacher. He should know where the students are at. But you don't, because they're not in your class, and it's not your problem. Of course, I'm sure, like, super eagle-eyed viewers probably saw it coming from, like, miles away. However, I didn't. There's a lot of YouTubers who are able to guess things ahead of time. I can sometimes do it, but I am not one of them. And you have to remember, a lot of people usually spoil things for themselves, looking for thumbnail art, accidentally seeing something. Like, for example, if you remember that one time, I was trying to look up art for Zelgis, and I saw that the wiki article that was just titled Zelgis, also known as the blank, which I don't even know I'm hiding, but because it's just... Anyways, if there's one thing this game has done better than almost any other Fire Emblem game ever, minus, I'd say, the Tellius series, it's world building. The world they built here is fantastic. I feel like each area that each house comes from, I can get an idea of what is going on there, what life is kind of like there. Although, actually, that is something I don't really feel like I know, because you're so restricted to the monastery, I don't know what towns in Claude's nation is. I don't know what towns in the Adrestian Empire look like. I don't know their status. I don't know how happy people are. And that is another thing that makes it kind of weird to try and pick a house at the beginning, is because you've never even been to any of these places. So it's like... I don't know how well the rule is going over there, you know? That is the one part of the world building I wish I got to see more. I wish I got to see more towns and not just be stuck at Garreg all the time. Well, I love having a home base is a bit annoying because it feels like you only go places when you have to fight. But other than that, the world building once again was fantastic. I loved going through the library, reading all the little entries. I didn't do it on screen, but I did it in my free time, and that was pretty cool. I love when people talk about their small, a lot of the noble characters talked about like, oh, my father's in this area doing this, and eventually you do a side mission or a main mission that deals with their family. Like, every person felt like every person's background was part of the world. And they all had something to do with the world as you went out. It was not just you going outside and they're like, oh, hey, that is Uncle Fred over there. I know him. We better save him from bandits. It's like, no, something is happening in my house's territory. And usually it causes some sort of character conflict where they're like, my dad wants me to take care of this, or I don't care about him, or what's going on in this area. And it's really cool to see that, genuinely. All the paralogs, while not all of them are winners as far as, like, I'd say map design goes, a lot of the setup for the paralogs is really cool. I even enjoyed the paralog where you go out with Leone and Linhardt, and it's just like, Leone's like, let's go to the magic turtle and get free weapons. And Linhardt's just like, please let me go back to bed. But yeah, the world this game takes place in is amazing. All the way from ancient civilizations dating back to things that may happen in the future. I honestly hope we get a sequel to this game. I really do. And I mean a direct sequel. I do not mean something in a different world, because I am kind of tired of every single FE game being placed in a new area. It's not like I want them all to be connected, but it'd be nice to see a timeline of a specific place grow. And I know what you're thinking. You're all like, Xeno, but 6 and 7 are in the same place. 11 and 12 are in the same place. 9 and 10 are in the same place. What do you mean? It's like, well, I know, but for 13, 14, 15, 16, well, like, if you count this, 17, but the past 3 Fire Emblem games have been completely separate places that have nothing to do with one another. So, just saying. As far as the characters go, though, the characters in this game were just great. They were some of the best there's ever been. Some were misses. Like, I have to be honest. I've talked about Raphael a lot, and I don't think he's a bad character, but a lot of the time he feels just like a straight-up gag character. He's super sweet and nice, and he cares about his sister, and there's a lot going on to him, but, like, whenever I talk to him, it just felt like he's just going like, yeah, food, buddy. It's like, I don't know. I got kind of sick of his food antic by the end of the game. But every other character I talked to, I genuinely enjoyed talking to them, and it felt like every new support, I was figuring out something about them I didn't know before, and that's a big deal. I hate it when I go through multiple supports for the same person, and it just comes down to the same exact thing, and that's something that Fates really didn't get. Fates did that a lot, where I would go through 7 supports. Like, Baruka, almost all of her supports were like, do you get it? I kill people. Did you hear me? I kill people. It's like, I know, okay? But here, a lot of the supports made me feel differently. And a lot of the characters that people hated at the beginning, like, they wound up being some of the most deep and interesting characters in the game to me. Like, I could not believe people hated Ignatz and Lawrence. Lawrence has some of the most character development out of anyone. Like, he goes from being, like, that creepy, awkward teenage kid to someone who genuinely cares about his allies. He genuinely cares about their safety, wants everyone to be at their best, and sees people for who they are. Like, he's an amazing character, and same for Ignatz. Ignatz has a bunch of past trauma with Raphael. He has these interesting views that have to go with his painting and artistry towards people, and every single conversation, like, adds a little bit to what he wants to do in life, and it's really cool to see that. You have all these people basically encouraging him. The best character in the whole game, in my opinion, is either Lawrence or Marianne. Marianne's character was amazingly written. So much that, like, it felt like I was talking to some of my real friends with very similar issues to her. And seeing her, at the end of the day, come out and just become this, I want to say, like, a fearsome person. Like, she was able to stand up for herself post-time skip. She really was ready to fight. She wasn't hiding anymore, feeling the insecurities she had as much, you know, it's great. And that goes for almost all the characters in this game. One character I was baffled that I liked so much was Sothis. Once again, I know people have been saying, like, you've been saying Sothis and Sothis, only one of those is right. I still don't know which one is right, but I don't really care either way. But, I cannot believe how much I connected with her. I was worried at the beginning of the game because I was like, oh, it's Tiki again, yay. And no, through her quips, you talking to her all the time, she legitimately felt like your best friend of the game. Like, you have Claude too, but she felt like the closest person to you, and no one knew you like her. And that the moment when she was gone, it felt like garbage. It felt awful, because, like, you just look at the bed and you're like, oh, I can't talk to Sothis this morning. That's right, she's not there. And, like, you keep hoping the whole game, like, maybe Sothis will come back, maybe I can hear Sothis, and it just doesn't happen, which is really good. But oh boy, I like that character a lot. It was an unexpected character for me to just completely fall in love with, and I think a lot of people have too. The amount of people that constantly draw her, the amount of, like, smug she has is just great, you know. I also saw a lot of people getting angry because it was like, oh man, some of these characters are only 2-dimensional or whatever, you know. Because people will say this forever. Like, oh, final characters are 1-dimensional, 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, or whatever they have to say. The reality of the situation is when you have a roster of over 30, 40, 50 characters, I don't know how many there were in this game, but when you have that many characters, giving them all deep and intricate personalities is super difficult. Like, just, if you've watched my Tales of Berseria playthrough, just characterizing all of those characters in Berseria took entire games. It took 60 to 80 hours to make them feel like these real people that you understood and can connect with. And this game has so far done the best with making people feel varied and not just like a singular quirk. For a lot of cases, there's a few people who did feel like that, but anything I do wish I experienced more in the route, it was seeing other characters' motivations, because not learning anything at all as to why Edelgard or Dimitri is doing anything they are doing, even after their death, feels a bit, I don't know, it feels a bit cheap. Like, I know there's multiple routes, and I know that's the point of the game, so you get tons of gameplay, but it doesn't feel like the amount of knowledge I was left with about the other two was like, man, I can't wait to go play their stories and figure out what that was about. It feels more like, oh, so you're not gonna tell me shit, and I have to go play the other one. Like, it didn't feel right by me, I guess I'll say. I think I've said all I pretty much have had to. Overall, this is probably one of my favorite Fire Emblem games. I know a lot of what I've said here at the end sounded super negative, but despite that, I had a really fun time. Even until, like, the very end. Well, I'll say, like, 3-4 episodes from the end. Yeah, I'd say about 5 episodes from the last episode. I started to get pretty burned out, but I had fun for almost the entire way. I was always excited to see what would happen next in the story, what the next support would be like. You know, I was just really happy playing this game, and I don't regret a second of it. Now, as far as how close I'm gonna return to the other routes, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I feel like I've heard Black Eagles is really, like, it's really short. So I don't know how soon I'm gonna do another route, because it's a huge amount of time. Just streaming one of the routes is gonna take multiple months of streaming a few times a week. So it's a bit daring to go through, especially because apparently, for whatever reason, you can't just skip to, like, the halfway point. Because I've heard, like, the beginning sections of the game are pretty much the same, minus, like, the dialogue and training the characters. And it seems kind of annoying that you can't, like, get to the halfway point and then split it off. You have to play through the entire game again. But, I'll see about doing the other routes in the future. I just don't know at the moment. If you like this series, I'd really consider checking out my next one, which is going to be XCOM. It is going to play a lot like this one. Especially if you like the gameplay and my kind of tactical commentary, going to be playing on the highest difficulty. I think you'll enjoy it. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. The support on this series has been phenomenal. Even if it hasn't been like oh man, this is the series I have that no one else can do because no one has a 3DS capture card, you know? It's gotten to a lot more people, and the series has gotten a lot more popular. Therefore, Fire Emblem as like a series to gain viewers. Which this is weird to say. I don't want to talk like this is the end of my series, but like as a series to gain viewers isn't as valuable now because everyone has a Switch, so anyone can do an LP. But you know, I still will do one every time because I love Fire Emblem, and you guys show just ridiculous amounts of support for what I do. I cannot thank you enough once again, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.